Hi, Khalid, and I think Abid is not available, so I continue still. And so today, the new session that I will be starting is the web-based development. And as the name implies, that web-based development means any applications that are related on the web. Web means on the internet. Internet. So the learning outcome over here is the first one is the understanding the client side and server side technologies. And second one is understanding the e-marketing techniques to promote the business online. So first we will understand the client sides and server sides. Then we will discuss the e-marketing techniques. So client server technologies include client server architecture, client side development, explain server side development, explain web services, web applications. The other one would include e-marketing techniques, e-marketing strategies, SEO, etc. So the first hour will be on the first learning outcome. The second hour will be on the second learning outcome. So I start with the first session, which is the first learning outcome, understanding the client side and server side technologies. So the client server technologies, the client server architecture, a network architecture in which each computer or process on the network is either a client or server. So basically on the internet, on a network, you have computers, either of them can be a client or server. Really depends that what is a client and who is a client and who is a server. Basically the client is the one which is accessing the data or getting the data from a particular computer remotely, and the server is the one which is providing the data on a request to the client computer. Client server architecture components, there are clients, servers and communication network. For example, here is a computer which is the client, and server can be located somewhere else, which can serve for the purpose of the information or data. Clients. Applications that run on the computers are called the clients applications, rely on servers for files, devices, processing power, etc. For example, email client, an application that enables you to send and receive email. So basically the kind of applications, if it is an email client, then what happens on servers, our emails are stored. For example, if I say that Gmail is basically located on the servers. Whoever we send any email to someone, then we go to the server of the Gmail, and if the recipient is also from the Gmail, then Gmail will send the email from their one server to another server. And if we wanted to send the email from our Gmail server to the Hotmail server, then again we as a client will use the server, and that server will serve the purpose of sending email to another server. So clients are the applications which run on the clients. Servers, they are the computers or processes that manage network resources, disk drives, printers or print servers, network traffic. Examples can be the data server, a computer that processes the database queries. Servers manage resources. So resources can be any of the emails, can be the bank information, can be the lots of data, lots of implies information which is stored on the servers. So servers, they manage the resources. Resource can be any, it could be data or any computational power, or it could be the storage. Network connects clients and servers. So basically either it is a client or server, it is basically connected through the network. Client server computing optimizes the computing resources. Processes can take place on the servers and on the clients. The servers stores and protect the data, processes requests from the clients, and clients make requests and format data on the desktop. So overall, the client and server, they help in utilizing or optimizing the computing resources remotely. Client has its own role, server has its own role. Client server architecture, or what is a client, or what is a client server architecture model? The client server architecture is a program relationship in which one program, the client, requests or service or resources from another program. So overall, in the client server architecture, one is the, as we discussed in the first picture, that either can be the client or the server. So one is server, which is providing some data or resources, and another one is the client, which is requesting the data. So it can happen over the LAN or WAN. LAN is the geographical location, or let's say the layout of the network, which is within the premises of a building and which may not be connected through the external network, like let's say within an office. So within an office, you can have a client as well as a server installed and used for that particular purpose as a client or server, or you can have the client and server model deployed on the WAN, wide area network, which is also called the internet. So on the internet, so either of the location or the type of the network, the client server architecture model can be used. Now we talk about the client side development. The client side programming has mostly to do with the user interface with which the user interacts. In web development, it is the browser in the user's machine that runs the code, and it's mainly done in JavaScript, Flash, etc. This code must run in a variety of browsers. So we talk about the development, that how basically the program or our browser, the internet browser, Internet Explorer, the Google Chrome, the Firefox, any browser, how they display the content to us. For example, if whenever you are requesting a Google page, then a page is taken from the Google server into your computer's browser, and it gives some information in the form of graphical user interface, which is basically designed using the HTML, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, the HTML hypertext markup language using HTTPS. So when you are using the browser, then mostly if it is the static content which is requested from the server would be in the form of HTML, hypertext markup language will be displayed to you. But there can be the possibility that the contents within the browser could be executed on your browser without sending any request to the server, is called as client-side development. The example, for example, when you are going to submit any form, for example, if you wanted to create any new account, new email, and the Hotmail or Gmail or whichever the email provider is, they ask you to select an email, they ask you to fill in the password, and most of the time they match the password. So what happens when you mistype the password second time, then password really don't goes to the server, and server does not respond to you that okay, the password that you have chosen should be same as the second time, so that you should be very much sure that you are the password that you are selecting should not be forgotten. So the password matching is basically done on the client side. Sometimes some websites ask you the one information like enter your email again, then that email checked that whether you inserted the email second time is basically the correct or not. That is done on the client side development, which is used or done through the scripting languages. The client side scripting, JavaScript, Flash, and other similar codes are the example of client side scripting. So how the client-side scripting is done? Basically, it is done within the body of the HTML. So let me show you that how the body of HTML is done. It is in this way. HTML scripting. Or HTML simply W3 school. When you look at the HTML, basically the page you are looking at is in the form of HTML. For example, this W3 school is being displayed to you in the form of HTML, and HTML has certain starting, like HTML is a tag, HTML is closing tag, the head, the title, the page of title, like you can see here, it's a HTML tutorial, this is the title. Then the body, this is HTML heading, this is HTML, this is the heading, and this is the paragraph. So let me click here. This is heading, this is a paragraph. So here is the HTML code that runs by the browser, and the result that you get in the normal HTML pages is basically the information which we define within the headings, paragraph, the formatting. It is one kind of the processed HTML text that you get on the browser. So what happens, if we talk about the JavaScript, in the W3 schools, then what happens? You basically define the JavaScript code within the HTML body. Within the HTML body. How it is done? It is basically done. You can have a look. This is the same HTML code. Starting and ending is same. Then you basically write a separate tag of script, basically inside the body, and you write the code of JavaScript, or also called the client-side script, and that script is basically executed on the browser. It is not executed from the server. So if I say that if I give you a program like adding two numbers, one is the 3, another is 5. So if you are basically entering the number 2 and 3 to be added on this computer, on your computer, then the code will be written into the client-side script. If you want, basically, for example, the addition should be done on the Google server, okay, then you will send the request of with data to the server, and the addition will come to you. That will call the server-side scripting. So now, as this subject is concerned, it is assumed that in the level 5, you should be able to understand the HTML, that you know in advance, or maybe you should have some basic concepts of the HTML, because it is assumed that at some stage in the level 3, level 4, you must have studied the HTML, like in the introduction to computer systems and software. You should have come through these concepts of the basic HTML. So assuming that you know the HTML and the client-side code is being made into the HTML fragment, and that is the scripting, the client-side scripting, which runs on the clients instead of the servers. So it can be any client-side scripting in JavaScript, VB script, or Flash, which runs on the client side. Now we come to the server-side development. As I already explained, the server-side scripts, they run on the remote computer and they serve the purpose of clients. For example, if the clients wanted anything to be done, then client rotates from one location to the server, means it is the request will be sent from the client computer to the server computer, no matter wherever the server is, and the server will get the request from the client. Obviously the request will be sent to the server using the internet browser, and the server side development will be able to detect the parameters, the variables, the values from that request and do some processing on those parameters and return the output again in the HTML, which can be displayed to the client. So the server-side scripting is about that, which could be implemented in the ASP.NET, the JSP.NET, Ruby, and most of the popular thing is nowadays is a PHP. So if this tag, this code is written on the server, this is again a kind of similar language to the HTML, which is used within the file of the HTML, and code is saved with their extension so that the server computer should be able to execute it as a PHP. Then H1 means heading 1, like is hello, and PHP echo hello is basically the hello will be written as heading 1 to the client, as we did an example here, like this. This is heading, and this is a heading, and this is a paragraph. So this was executed statically, and we wrote this text without using any dynamic language. But over here in the PHP, it could be the case when you sent your name, and you could probably get the output that, let's say hello, let's say you entered Khalid, then the page could tell you that hello Khalid, how can I help? So this is basically called the dynamic web programming, which is basically implemented using the server-side technologies or server-side programmings. Now, so you should consider that HTML or basic web development is called the static websites, and when you are basically doing something dynamic where the server does some calculations or gets some content from the database, or the output of the client is based on some calculation or any methods, then you are dealing with the dynamic web development. Now, a little more advanced topic on this is service-oriented architecture. Now, assume that you have servers, lots of servers, and you have services in the form of web servers. You have multiple servers, and being a consumer, service consumer, you require more than one service. For example, if you wanted to add 2 numbers, then possibly adding 2 numbers could be provided by different providers. It could be done by different providers. So because they do the calculation of addition, then different providers can do the calculation at different costs. So service brokers is a kind of registry, the database of the services. They store about the information about the service providers as well as the service brokers, that who the service broker is kind of registry, which this information is stored into the service registry or service broker about service providers, and it is the responsibility of the service consumers to find the service first and the service provider from the directory of services, which is service broker, and then after finding the services, they access the service providers directly by getting the information and the locations or addresses of the service providers, and they interact via some protocol, some rules. So it has become now the normal client servers, they were little bit specific to only to few clients. For example, one server had let's say 10 clients. For example, one server had 100 clients. But if we wanted two servers to be combined, then when the two servers do a particular job, give you a comprehensive information. For example, if you wanted to book an airline as well as if you wanted to book the hotel as well, then using the service-oriented architecture, you can get those two services as a one service using this service-oriented architecture. So, adopting the service-oriented architecture, you are basically delivering the functionality as a service. So, you are getting the basically different websites as a service, and so that you can reuse the applications instead of basically contacting or rebuilding each service, and obviously that is expensive. So standards help you, the standards of service oriented architecture, they help you to get the softwares as assets, softwares as a service. So software, for example, one service provider is providing you one particular service of one particular, let's say, accounting calculation. Another service provider is providing you another accounting calculation. Then it is your responsibility, it is the responsibility of the service-oriented architecture that can give you a combined solutions in the form of services. Whatever that type of service you only acquire, you will not need to buy the particular asset, you only use as a service. So service is basically a reusable component that can be used and building block to form a larger, more complex business applications. It could be a personal data or payment processing. So that would be a reusable. Whatever the service provider is giving you, it is giving you their resources as a service. So basically, it is an infrastructure. I already explained. You can go through these definitions again. Now, the characteristics. If we talk about the characteristics of a service, then basically we are describing in this way: the service supports open standards for integration. It means if you are providing a web service, then the standards used by the service are open standards, such as the HTML, the XML, SOAP, WSDL, the languages, the protocols used by every service provider are open standards, so that every platform, every language of the programming could interact with each other. I am trying to explain into the superficial, in the non-technical language, so that the service having the open standards means the usage of such standards protocols where any kind of programming language, platform, server, client should be able to communicate without any problem of compatibility. Second option, loose coupling. Loose coupling. Coupling is a kind of integration. The consumer of the service is required to provide only the stated data on the interface definition and to expect only the specified results. So it means whatever the programming you are using, you should not have the similar programming language that you are buying the service. The service provider will give you the information or the results of the processed service into a universally agreeable format, so that you will not have any problem of coupling. You should not need to write your program according to their architecture, but it should be loosely coupled. There is no need of any adhesive coupling with the service provider. Stateless is the concept that if you are acquiring a service, then you need not to be connected every time with the service provider, and that only the connection will only remain when you requested and you were getting the output from the service provider. So it is the beautification of the service that it supports open standards, loose coupling, stateless concept, location independence. So these are the characteristics of the service. Now, the web service is basically the original concept, that is basically the more specific terminology given to the services using the XML, SOAP, HTTP, these protocols. Now we go into the detail. A web service is basically the implementation of the service-oriented architecture, and it has same features of the service as we described earlier, that it uses the universally agreeable protocols. It focuses on describing the independent of any coupling, independent of state, independent of location, and generally used standards. So web service uses and has these features which come under the service-oriented architecture. The main pillars of the web services basically are SOAP, UDDI, and WSDL. Basically, the services that you describe is basically described using the web service description language. UDDI, Universal Description Discovery and Integration, is basically the registry of the services, is the broker service where the list of services are stored. As I discussed earlier in this picture, the service broker or UDDI is the central location, and the service description which is stored into the service broker is basically the WSDL, and the communication between the service consumer and service provider as well as with the service broker is done using the SOAP. SOAP is the simple object access protocol. So three pillars of the web services, and XML is basically the language used for these type of protocols within the SOAP, UDDI, and WSDL. So if WSDL or the web services have these three pillars. Now we talk about the roles of the web services. So normally you have a service provider, you have a service requester, and you have a service registry, which we discussed earlier in detail. Now we talk a little more about the WSDL. Basically, the WSDL is the web service description language that defines the functional description. It defines details of how services is invoked, where it is invoked, focuses on the details of syntax of the message, and how to reconfigure the network protocols to deliver the message. And can also have the non-functional description, provides other details that are secondary to the message, such as security protocols, policy, instruct the requester's runtime environment, etc. So you can define that what the service is, how to access it, as well as you can also provide some non-functional descriptions within the WSDL. So WSDL stands for this. WSDL was developed by this. WSDL is based on XML. It is a standard format for describing. So these are the definitions about the WSDL. SOAP is a protocol. SOAP can extend the HTTP normal protocol, provides the transport for the web services, exchanges completes, can be used for broadcasting, blah, blah, blah. So basically that's a very big field of the web services. Nowadays, it's a technology, and lots of technologies are basically implementing the web service protocol, and over here we are only giving you the introduction, so that you should be very much familiar regarding the all types of the architectures of the web. So then RDFS, Resource Description Framework. This RDF is used basically in order to enhance the capability of the web service, so that your content should have more meaning. If there are lots of services, and it's not necessary that the name of the service could give you the actual functionality of the service to be discovered, but using the RDF, Resource Description Framework, you are probably getting more and more most relevant services out of the pool of the services. And XML is basically the extensible markup language. It is basically the universally acceptable markup language, and it is similar to HTML, but it is used and stored with the extension of XML, and it is designed to store the data and transport data. So basically, as discussed earlier, the communication between the service provider, consumer, and the broker, it is done using the protocol of SOAP, but SOAP uses the XML to carry out the data in between. The XML simplifies data sharing, data transport, and simplifies platform changes, simplifies data availability. So it is much more, it has more definitions, more characteristics. Now we come to the website development, the new topic. So previous was about the web services. Web development is a broad term in the form of work involved in developing a website for the internet or an intranet among web professionals. Usually refers to the main design aspects of building websites, which includes 7 steps. So if you want to have a website developed, then you should have gathered information, which could be the purpose, main goal, target audience. You should plan the sitemap and wireframe creation, that how the site plan will be, how the website will have a structure, how the number of frames will be there in your website. You should have a design constraint, how the page layout would be there, how you should review those, approve the cycle. Content writing and assembly, how you will be writing your contents, how you will be assembling your coding, assembling your contents as well as coding of the website. Then you should consider the testing and reviewing the process of website development, as well as the maintenance, that how your website development will be maintained, how you will monitor those, how you will be doing the regular updates. And you should consider the database design. The database is known as how the database will look like. Arranged and organized. The database design that you should have is, you should have known facts about the database. For example, for the database design for a web application, you should consider following things: to know that what functionality is needed from the database, to determine the tables and fields, what fields you will be using, and most likely to use the relational databases for most websites, such as the SQL is used on the most of the websites, grouping or separating data into fields, database normalization. So for your website development, you should be able to know the database design, that how the data should be stored and what type of the data you need, which type of the database you should choose, and so that these are the characteristics for the constraints, the concerns that you should select, as we discussed in this slide, like gathering information, planning, designing, content, coding, and the testing and maintenance, and the database is also most important. So normally the database design could be done into any database, but the most popular, the freeware, is the MySQL. MySQL, this is the kind of PHP MyAdmin. This is a screenshot of the database which is used by the most web hosting providers, and you basically manage this database. This topic, the next one is a three-tiered application. Three-tier application is basically the client-server architecture in which the functional, process logic, data access, computer data storage, and user interfaces are developed and maintained independently on separate platforms. So functionality, data, and storage. Let me go to this in detail. The three-tier architecture is basically based on presentation, application, and data tier. Let me review the concept again. From the very beginning, we started with the client server. We discussed with the types of the coding. Then we discussed the HTML, normal, and the servers. Then we came to the concept of service-oriented architecture, means the websites or web servers or web service providers could be integrated to give everything as a service. Then we discussed little bit more about the web services, and then new topic we discussed that how we really start to develop the websites. So we considered some concepts of these things, let's say seven steps. Then we should also consider the database design. Now we talk about the architecture. The question arises that where exactly the data should store, where exactly the logic should store, and where exactly the presentation should be. So the presentation basically is given to the client, and application tier is basically the server itself which is serving you, and the third tier indeed is basically the database which could be stored separately. It cannot be the part of the server itself. It cannot be the part of the client server model, but it is a third tier. It could be on the same server, but it is the independent tier. So probably you could store your dynamic web pages using the client and server side technologies, but you must need to select the three-tier architecture so that your data should be stored independently. Like in the above example, we were supposed to have a database design to be selected, stored properly, and as well as in the normalized form, so that we could deal with the three-tier architecture very well. So the presentation is basically the top layer which displays the information to the user. The application tier or the middle tier logic is basically the business logic tier. This tier is pulled from the presentation tier. It controls application functionality. So if I say that a client wanted to get any information from particular, let's say, if we wanted to check the email, so we will go to the Gmail, and the Gmail will itself get those emails from the email server where the emails are stored, or maybe it could be any business logic. The business logic would be the intermediate tier, and the data tier would be fetched. It would be accessed from the third tier. So three-tier architectures are basically the normal web architectures most of the time that you are dealing, and you should have a clear concept. Like MVC pattern is also a kind of further when you will develop when you will study more about the tiers and architectures into the web development, probably you could add another tier as well. Now, interface design. So if whenever you are developing the web applications, you should consider the interface design. The user interface design or user interface engineering is the design of use of interfaces for machines and software such as computers, home applications, mobile devices, etc. So good user interface design facilitates finishing the task and finishing the task at hand without drawing unnecessary attention to itself. Graphic design and typography are utilized to support its usability, influencing how the user performs certain interactions and improving the aesthetic appeal of design. Design aesthetics may enhance or detract from the ability of the users to use the functions of an interface. So basically, it is the responsibility of the graphics designer that it can involve your interest into the useful usage, linkage, and functionality of your interface, of your website, and it can also destroy the concentration of the user. You must have noticed that sometimes you browse many websites and most of the searches that you close immediately because you don't like the interfaces and you distract your attention and you close immediately. But sometimes when you find any website, good user interface designs, then you really involve into those interfaces and try to remain and to be engaged into those user interfaces. So interface design is much more important. You should consider about the well-designed interface into your web development. So interface design could be any combination of the pictures, text, menus, and interactive sidebars, and it really depends on how you want to design the interfacing design is important. The architecture of the application is important. The database architecture is important. Certain constraints of the web development important. Then the introduction about the normal web, introduction about the web services, introduction about the benefits of the services. These were the core topics of the learning outcome 1, and in the next session we will start with the learning outcome 2, and we end this session now, and I hope, Khalid, that you must be listening, and I will get your questions now. So Khalid, can you hear me? Okay, I stop the recording now and I again rejoin the meeting so that you can ask the questions.